Okay, in this video, I am going to share with you the results from the 1990s National League Diamond Gems tournament that I played. This set has 9 teams in it, and right off the bat, I'm going to show you the bracket that I had set up for the series, and you're going to see that my number 1 and number 2 seeds are the 1997 Marlins and the 1990 Cincinnati Reds. Now, the way I come across ranking these teams is I give them 10 points if they won the World Series, 5 if they won the LCS, and an additional 3 points if they won 100 games. So the 97 Marlins and the 90 Reds are the only National League teams who won the World Series in this set. The Atlanta Braves are represented by the 1996 team, not the 1995 team. So if I'm to show you the little chicken scratch worksheet of how I came across these rankings, you're going to see that I had the 94 Expos come in at number 3. Because what I decided to do was I decided to give them 5 points for the LCS, thinking that they had the best record in the National League when the season ended. So that's how I came across them getting 8 points. And I also gave them an additional 3 points because based on their winning percentage, they would have been well over 100 wins had they played out that 1994 baseball season. So, and then you go through the rest of the rankings. Really, you got a couple of teams tied here with 5 points. That's the 98 Padres, 93 Phillies, and 96 Braves. And the reason why the Padres come in at number 4 is because they won 98. The 93 Phillies won 97, and the 96 Braves won 96. So that's how I came across those numbers. And then at the bottom, number 7, you've got the 1993 San Francisco Giants. They actually came in at 3 points because they won 103 games. Same deal with the 98 Astros, only they won 102 games. So that's why the San Francisco Giants are ranked higher. And coming in at the bottom is the number 9 ranked, the 1990 Pittsburgh Pirates. So that's how I came across coming up with these rankings. And you're going to see in the bracket here, the way I have it set up is basically you're going to have 3 play-in games. The first one being the 90 Pirates at the 98 Astros, and then the winner of that will go on to play the number 5 seed, the Philadelphia Phillies. And in the bottom bracket, you've got the number 7 seed, 93 Giants, taking on the number 6 seed, 96 Braves. And then the next day, you're going to start your best of 3 series where you have the number 3 seed, 94 Expos, waiting around to see who they play, and you've got the number 4 seed, 1998 Padres. So let's get into the results of the tournament. And again, I don't go into great detail in these games just because there were so many games to go through. So feel free to pause the video and check out the play-by-play. But in the first playing game, once again, you got the 90 Pirates at the 98 Astros, Doug Drabeck against Randy Johnson. And you're going to see the 98 Astros take this one by a score of 2-1. So the 98 Astros are moving on and the 90 Pirates are out. Now, staying with the Astros and with that top bracket, let's take a look at what happened between the 98 Astros and the 1993 Phillies. You're going to see that the 1993 Phillies take this one by a score of 4-2 as Curt Schilling goes all the way in. It was a game where the 98 Astros really had a ton of chances to try to get more runs across. You see, the Phillies were up 4-0 after 4, and it was looking like it was going to be a fairly easy win for the Phillies, but the Astros clawed back into the game with runs in the 5th and the 6th, and the Phillies were able to hold them off from there. So the 93 Phillies are moving on, and the 98 Astros are out. Now let's get into a very interesting one-game play-in scenario here where you got the 93 Giants taking on the 1996 Atlanta Braves. You got John Burkett going for the Giants and John Smoltz for the Atlanta Braves. And you're going to see the 93 Giants win this one by a score of 3-2. The big hit in this game was a Willie McGee 1-out 2 RBI triple off of John Smoltz, and that was a triple hit off of John Smoltz's card, and it was a triple 1-2, and it just happened to come up a triple, and that extra run played a really big role, as you could tell that the Giants were able to win it by a score of 3-2. So the 93 Giants are moving on to the best of three, where they will take on the 1994 Montreal Expos. So let's stay with that series for now, and then we'll go back to the top bracket. In game number one of this series, you got Bill Swift going up against Ken Hill, and you can see the 93 Giants win this one by a score of 6-4. Terrific outing by the Giants bullpen in this game as Jackson, Rogers, and Beck combined to throw 4 scoreless innings. So the 93 Giants get the all-important first game in this best of three. So in game number two now, with the 94 Expos back to the wall, you're going to see the Pedro Martinez comes through for the 94 Expos, and the Expos are able to win this one by a score of 4-1 as they're able to beat Trevor Wilson and the Giants. So this best of three is moving on to a decisive third game where you're going to have Bud Black on the mound for the 93 Giants and Jeff Facero for the 94 Expos. And you could see in what was really a really wild game, the 93 Giants are able to win this one in extra innings by a score of 8-5 as they're able to get 3 runs in the top half of the 10th inning. That was Royce Clayton with a bases loaded triple with 1 out. He hit that off of John Wetland. John Wetland came into the game, and he's got a lot of walks on his card. If I remember right, two of the 3 walks were off of his card. So he starts the inning by walking Will Clark, Matt Williams, and Barry Bonds, and then he's able to get Willie McGee to ground out into a force out at home. But then Royce Clayton's able to come through with the bases clearing triple. So what that means is the 1993 San Francisco Giants are moving on to the semifinal round where they will take on the number 2 seed, the 1990 Cincinnati Reds. Now, let's take a look at what happens in the other best of 3 where we have the 1993 Phillies taking on the 1998 San Diego Padres. In this first game, you got Danny Jackson for the Phillies, Kevin Brown for the Pods, and San Diego wins this one fairly easy by a score of 5-2. They had a 5-0 lead going into the top half of the 9th inning when the Phillies were finally able to crack the scoreboard a little bit. Had to bring in Trevor Hoffman to get the last 2 outs of the game. So San Diego takes the all-important first game by a score of 5-2. So the Phillies, in a must-win scenario, have Tommy Green on the mound, and he's going up against Joey Hamilton for the 98 Padres. And you're going to see the 98 Padres are able to pull this one out by a score of 7-5 as they were able to get 2 runs in the bottom of the 8th and 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th as it was Andy Sheets hitting a walk-off 2-run home run to give the Padres that 7-5 win. So we have our semifinals set up now. You've got the 98 Padres taking on the number 1 seed 1997 Florida Marlins. And as I stated before, 93 Giants taking on the number 2 seed 1990 Cincinnati Reds. So first, let's go through the Padres-Marlins series. Again, the Padres are the 4 seed and the Marlins are the number 1 seed. Now, just a quick reminder going into this series, the Padres won their first round playoff series, the best of 3, in 2 games. So they had 2 days off coming into this series. So what I decided to do for the Padres was I'm going to bring Kevin Brown back on 3 days rest to pitch game number 1 for the Padres. And then I'm going to go Ashby, Hamilton, and make a decision from there as to what goes on in game number 4. So that sets up a game 1 matchup of Kevin Brown against Kevin Brown, Padres Marlins, game number 1. First 2 games are in Florida. So let's take a look at game 1 here, and you're going to see the Padres take this one by a score of 7-5 as the Padre bats were able to really wake up late in the game here as they were trailing 2-1 going into the top half of the 8th inning. You had a home run by Gomez to tie the game, and then Greg Vaughn hits a 3-run home run off Jay Powell to give the Padres a 5-2 lead. The Marlins come back with 3 runs of their own in the bottom half of the eighth inning, and then in the top of the ninth, San Diego was able to come through with two more runs to take a 7-5 lead, and that's how it would hold. So the Padres get the first game of this best of five by a score of 7-5. Now in game number two, we have Ashby going for the Padres and Fernandez going for the Marlins, and you're going to see the Marlins win this one fairly easily by a score of 10-4. You could see the middle of the Marlins lineup really went crazy in this game. You see Bobby Bonilla goes 4 for 4. With a home run, two ribbies, and 4 runs scored. Moises Alou had two doubles and three RBIs in the game. So the Marlins get game number two. So we go back to San Diego with the series tied a game apiece. And in game number three, we have Livan Hernandez going up against Joey Hamilton. And you're going to see the Padres are able to get this one by a score of 8-7. This was a game where the Padres were up pretty comfortably going into the top half of the eighth inning as they had an 8-3 lead going into that top half of the eighth. And the Marlins were able to claw their way back into the game. Darren Daulton had 2 home runs in the game for the Marlins. You see the 2-run home run in the top half of the eighth inning there. And then the Marlins were able to put the first two guys on base in the top half of the ninth inning off of Trevor Hoffman. Devon White had an RBI ground out, and with the tying run at second base, again, Trevor Hoffman on the mound, he's able to strike out Renteria and Sheffield to close the game. So the Padres have the number one seed, Florida Marlins, on the ropes here as they're up 2-1 going into game number four. So what I decided to do for the 97 Marlins going into this game was I decided to bring Kevin Brown back on 3 days rest. I just felt more comfortable with him in an elimination game than I did with Leiter pitching. Even though, of course, if the Marlins win this game, it would probably be Al Leiter in game number 5 anyways, but just felt like bringing back Kevin Brown was the best move here for the Marlins. And Sterling Hitchcock is going to be on the mound for the 98 Padres. And you're going to see the Marlins are able to hang on and win this one by a score of 1-0, as the only run scored in this game was a RBI groundout by Bobby Bonilla in the top half of the second inning. And you can see Kevin Brown was able to shut the Padres out for 6 innings, and the Marlins bullpen was able to shut the door for the last 3 innings. Padres were only able to get 2 hits in the game, but they did have a couple scatterings of walks throughout the game where they were able to get a couple of guys on base, a couple of guys reached scoring position. Like, for example, in the bottom half of the 8th inning, you had John Vanderwall reach on a Bobby Bonilla error, and then the second baseman Veras walked, so they had first and second and 1 out. But the Padres just weren't able to get any big hits with people on base in this game. So the Marlins were able to get game number 4. So the best of 5 is pushed to a deciding game where we're going to have Kevin Brown on the mound for the 98 Padres and Al Leiter for the 1997 Marlins. And you're going to see that the 98 Padres are able to eliminate the number one seed by a score of 5-4. The Padres were able to jump on Al Leiter in the first inning. You had Ken Caminiti hit a 3-run home run in that top half of the first inning. And then Greg Vaughn hits a 2-run home run with Al Leiter still on the mound to make the score 5-1. And the Marlins were able to make the game real interesting as they were able to get 3 runs in the bottom half of the 6th inning. You had an RBI double by Moises Alou. Craig Counsell had a 2 RBI single. And after that, Cliff Floyd pinch hit. He strikes out, and Devon White made out. So the Padres were able to get through that inning with a 5-4 lead. And that's how the game would hold. The Marlins weren't able to really put up much of a fight in those last 3 innings as they were only able to put one guy on base via a error by first baseman Jim Leyritz. So there you have it. The 1998 Padres are moving on to my National League Championship round as they defeat the Florida Marlins in 5 games. And now let's go through the other semifinal series where we got the 93 Giants taking on the 1990 Cincinnati Reds. Best of five. Games one and two will be in Cincinnati. Game one, you got John Burkett on the mound for the Giants and Tom Browning for the Reds. And you could see the Reds take the first game by a score of 3-1. Paul O'Neill had a two-run home run in the bottom half of the fourth inning to give the Reds a 3-0 lead, and the Reds were able to hang on to win this game as Dibble and Myers were able to combine for 3 innings out of the pen. So the Reds get the first game. Now in game number two, you got Bill Swift on the mound going up against Jose Rio. Giants take this one by a score of 5-3 as Matt Williams hits 3 home runs in the game and drives in four of the Giants' 5 runs. So the Giants are able to tie the series up. So we go back to San Francisco for game number three, where we got Jack Armstrong on the mound for the Reds and Trevor Wilson for the Giants. And the Reds get this one by a score of 9-6. The Reds trailed 6-5 going into the top half of the eighth inning. And with reliever Mike Jackson on the mound for the Giants, if I just take you through the play-by-play there, you had Sabo lead off with a single. Paul O'Neill pinch hits and he gets a double. And then Todd Benzinger comes up with a 2 RBI single. Now, the reason why I left Benzinger in there is because he's a switch hitter. The reason why I didn't bring up Hal Morris to pinch hit was because then the obvious move for the Giants would have been to bring in a lefty pitcher. So the Reds are able to take a 8-6 lead. They add another run in the ninth inning with another ribby single by Benzinger. This one was off of lefty Kevin Rogers. And so the Cincinnati Reds get a big swing game here as they take this one by a score of 9-6. Now, in game number four, I thought about bringing John Burkett back to pitch on 3 days rest for the Giants. But then I decided I feel good about Bud Black pitching this game for the Giants, and he's going to be going up against Danny Jackson. Once again, this is game four. Cincinnati is up 2-1. And you can see San Francisco wins this one by a score of 9-6. So we have back-to-back games, and by the same score. Only the Giants get this one. Matt Williams hits a 3-run home run in the bottom half of the first inning to give the Giants a 4-0 lead. And then Barry Bonds hits a 2-run homer in the bottom of the third to make it 6-0. And with San Francisco leading 7-1 after 5 innings, the Reds were able to claw back into the game to make it 7-5. The big hit in that inning was an Eric Davis 3-run home run, but the Giants bullpen was able to hold the Reds off for the last 3 innings as Rod Beck had to stretch him out a little bit as he goes a inning and a third to get the save. So we go back to Cincinnati for deciding game number five, where we have a rematch of the game one starters, John Burkett against Tom Browning. And let's take a look what happens in game number five. And you're going to see that Cincinnati is able to walk it off in 10 innings as they win this one by a score of 6-5. And what was just an absolutely crazy game. I mean, this series was just absolutely nuts. The Reds had a 5-3 lead going into the top half of the ninth inning, and I got Randy Myers on the mound pitching his second inning in relief. And you could see with one out, you get a single by Darren Lewis, and then Robbie Thompson hits a 2-run homer to tie the game at 5. Now, in the bottom half of the 10th inning with Mike Jackson on the mound, he is in his second inning of work. You see, you have 3 straight singles here, and this is how the Reds were able to walk it off. You had Eric Davis lead off with a single. Hal Morris gets a single. That advances Eric Davis to third. So we got first and third with nobody out. Now, this is one of those scenarios that I've run into sometimes with Strat-O-Matic. I personally don't like walking the bases loaded in Strat-O-Matic because I really don't like having run score on a walk. So what I decided to do for the Giants is with first and third, I just decided just bring the infield in. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, Chris Sable, I roll a plus hit on his card. So with the infield in, that's a single. So the Cincinnati Reds are able to walk it off in game number 5, and they are advancing to my National League Championship round, where they will take on the number 4 seed, the 1998 San Diego Padres. Okay, so let's go through the championship round here, Padres and Reds. And going into the series, because both of the semifinal rounds went 5 games, for both the Padres and the Reds, the way the rotations are basically going to work is number 2 starters pitch game 1, number 3 starters pitch game 2, and then the aces, the number 1 guys, pitch in game number 3. So that means the Padres will have Kevin Brown pitch in game number 3, which really isn't the worst thing in the world, but I think the Padres would have been better served. My feeling going into the series was that the Padres would have been better served if they didn't have to play the full 5 games in the semifinal. But nonetheless, let's take a look at what happens in our final round here. Game number 1, we got Andy Ashby going up against Jose Rio. And you can see the 90 Reds take game number 1 by a score of 3-1. The Reds were able to get 2 runs in the bottom half of the 6th inning, just to go down the line here in that 6th inning. Larkin leads off with a double. He's driven home by Paul O'Neill with a ribby single. And then a big error on left fielder Greg Vaughn, who's only an E2, but it came up an error. That puts runners on second and third, and Sabo drives in O'Neill with the ribby sac fly. So that's how the Reds get the 2 runs. Dibble and Myers combined to throw 2 scoreless innings out of the pen. So the 90 Reds get game number 1. In game number 2, we got Joey Hamilton going up against Jack Armstrong. And you're going to see here that the 90 Reds take game number 2 by a score of 7-3. The Reds got 4 runs in the bottom half of the 3rd inning. The big hit in that inning was you had a ribby triple by Barry Larkin and a 2-run home run by Hal Morris. So the 90 Reds are up 2-0 in this best of 7 final round. Now, in game number 3 now, back in San Diego, the Aces are on the mound. Tom Browning for the Reds, Kevin Brown for the Padres. And you can see the Padres win this one fairly easily by a score of 6-1. You had a ribby double by shortstop Gomez to cap off a 4-run bottom half of the 2nd inning for the Padres, and that was more than enough runs for Kevin Brown as he goes all the way. And that was a big complete game win for the Padres, and it was good for them to win this game easily because that means they didn't have to use up really any bullpen arms because again, this is the first game of up to 3 straight games. So it was nice that the Padres didn't have to use any bullpen guys. Same thing with the Reds, actually. I just ran Mailer out there for 3 innings. The Reds were down 5-0. Right, Reds were down 5-0 when Mailer came into the game. So just decided to just ride him the rest of the way. So both teams go into game number 4 with the fully rested bullpen. So let's take a look at what happens in game 4. The 2 number 4 starters are pitching this game, Danny Jackson for the Reds and Sterling Hitchcock for the Padres. And you can see the Reds get a very important game 4 win as they win this one by a score of 5-4. The Reds took a 3-1 lead in the top half of the 4th inning. You had Barry Larkin with a ribby double, and Glenn Braggs hits a 2-run home run to make it 3-1. And the Padres were able to get a run back to make it 3-2, and then an Eric Davis 2-run home run in the top half of the 6th inning made it 5-2. Then the Padres come right back and get 2 runs of their own in the bottom half of the 6th inning. And you could see in that bottom half of the 6th inning, just to go down the play-by-play, Greg Vaughn leads off with a single, then Ken Caminiti gets a single. to make it first and third. Jim Leyritz gets a ribby double, and then Steve Finley gets an RBI ground out. Now at this point, the score is 5-4 with a runner on third and one out. So what I decide to do for the Reds is I go ahead and bring in Rob Dibble. He strikes out the catcher Hernandez, and then the reason why I didn't walk the shortstop Gomez to make the pitcher come up, in which obviously the Padres would have pinch hit for the pitcher, was that I would have just preferred to pitch to Gomez in that spot, albeit Gomez has a very nice card from 1998. He's a very, very capable number 8 hitter in a lineup. Really nice card. I would just rather have pitched to him than pinch hitter, for example, like Vanderwall, who has a really nice card facing right-handed pitching. So I go ahead, pitch to Gomez. It worked out for the Reds. Gomez makes out. So it's 5-4 after 6, and that's basically how the game would stay the rest of the way. The Reds bullpen again is able to shut the Padres down as they combine for 3 2/3 scoreless innings. The Padres really didn't really mount any rallies in those last 3 innings. In the bottom half of the ninth inning, you see Hernandez led off with a single, and then I pinch run. Let me see if I get this name correct, Giovanola. But then Gomez hits into a double play. Ruben Rivera comes up, pinch hits, gets a single to extend the game, but then Veras makes the last out. So the 1990 Cincinnati Reds are up 3 games to 1 as we move on to game number 5. And in game number 5, it's a rematch of the game 1 starters where we got Jose Rio going up against Andy Ashby, and you're going to see right here that the 1990 Cincinnati Reds win my 1990s National League Strat-O-Matic tournament in 5 games as they win game 5 by a score of 10-8 in what was really a really wild game. The Reds get 2 runs in the first, 2 runs in the second, and then they score 4 more in the top half of the 5th inning. So through 4.5, it was 9-2 Reds, and you're thinking this game is going to be a complete washout. But credit the Padres; they were able to make the game interesting as they get a run in the bottom half of the 5th, and then they get 4 in the bottom half of the 6th inning. The big hit in that bottom half of the 6th inning was a 3-run home run by Greg Vaughn to make the score 10-7. But from there, the Reds bullpen once again was able to close the game out as they win this one by a score of 10-8. So it was really a really wild game. I think one thing that we saw play out in this series, as to be expected, the Reds had by far and away the superior bullpen. The Padres have obviously an excellent closer in Trevor Hoffman, but I think one of the issues that you saw play out in this series was the Padres' middle relievers. It was getting the ball to Trevor Hoffman or just coming in the middle or late innings, as they were forced to do, especially in this game, as they were trailing big. So those 4 runs that Maselli gave up in the top half of the 5th inning was really the big difference in the game, as the Padres were able to storm back into the game. But nonetheless, the 1990 Cincinnati Reds win my 1990s National League Strat-O-Matic tournament as they defeat the San Diego Padres 4 games to 1 in the final round. So a quick recap on this tournament. Number one, was I surprised that the 1990 Reds won this tournament? No, not at all, because anyone who saw my 1990 Cincinnati Reds team analysis video, you'll know that this is one of my favorite Strat-O-Matic teams ever. I think this is an absolutely terrific team. Um, the one weird thing about this tournament, and let me take you back to the way the bracket looked before I started playing any games. Because of my ranking system, and again, I do 10 points for winning the World Series. You get 5 if you win the LCS. You get an additional 3 if you won 100 games. Because of that point system, and also because of the fact that, and I stated this earlier in the video, the Atlanta Braves are represented in this set by their 1996 team, not their 1995 team that won the World Series. Because of that, I thought the way the teams fell based on my ranking system, it really kind of worked out kind of weird, because there's no way I would say that the 1997 Marlins are the best Strat-O-Matic team in this set. Now, that's not me dissing the 1997 Marlins, just in my opinion, as far as looking at their Strat-O-Matic team, I think the best teams in this set were all pretty much in the bottom bracket. In fact, if I was to rank these teams, I would pretty much say the 1993 Giants are probably the best team in this set. Number two, I would go the 1990 Reds. Number three, I'd probably say the 1996 Braves are the third best team. And then I would say the fourth best teams are actually the 94 Expos and 97 Marlins. They're like 4A and 4B. So, because of the way my ranking system works, you had some really, really good teams have to play early on in the tournament. Like, for example, one of the playing games was the number 7 seed San Francisco Giants, who didn't even make the postseason in 1993, taking on the 1996 Atlanta Braves, who went to the World Series, but they only had 5 points because they didn't win 100 games. So it was kind of like a weird tournament the way that it was set up. And I kind of felt that way going into the tournament because I almost felt like the better teams were towards the early part of the tournament, like in the play-in rounds. So in short, I felt like whoever came through this bottom bracket, San Fran, Atlanta, Montreal, Cincinnati, I felt like whoever came out of that bottom portion of the bracket would most likely win the entire tournament. Especially when you look at the Cincinnati Reds, they were the 2 seed, so they didn't have to mess around with playing any playing games or first round series, which is a best of three. They were just sitting there waiting to see who they would play in the semifinals. And as far as the Padres advancing all the way to the final round, that really didn't surprise me too much. In fact, I would say the only thing that really surprised me from the top part of the bracket, it was when the Padres beat the Phillies in the best of three. I actually felt going into that series that the Phillies would win that series. And then it would have been interesting to see what the Phillies would have done against the Florida Marlins, but it just wasn't in the cards for the 93 Phils. Obviously, a very competitive tournament. Keep in mind the way the tournament was set up with 3 play-in games and then 2 first round series, which was a best of three, and then 2 semifinals, best of five, and the final round, best of seven. That means there were a total of 26, maximum 26 games in this tournament. I ended up having to play 23, which means I only leave 3 games on the table not played in this tournament. The only missed games was because San Diego beat Philly 2 straight in the best of three, and Cincinnati beat San Diego in five, leaving 2 games on the table. Uh, both semifinal series go 5 games, and once again, that Reds Giant series, which I felt going in would be an absolutely terrific series, was just that. I mean, that was a crazy series. So my 1990s National League Strat-O-Matic tournament is done. The 1990 Cincinnati Reds are the winners, and this means the next video I will do, it will be the 1990 Cincinnati Reds taking on the American League winner from the tournament that I played, and that is the 1992 Toronto Blue Jays, in what should be another excellent series. So, once again, I thank you all for watching. It is greatly appreciated, and I will talk to you all down the road.